Hey guys, how's it going? It's Alex of Coyote Star Astrology, and this is my full moon in Capricorn lunar eclipse video for the eclipse happening on July 16th, 2019. We are well underway within eclipse season. We had our solar eclipse at the beginning of the month. So we are in between gateways right now, and eclipse season is all about change. It's all about letting go of the past and reaching for a new future. In this case, because we're letting go of the Capricorn past, a lot of this has to do with dissolving emotional barriers, becoming more sensitive, becoming more compassionate, reaching for connection, reaching for compassion for other human beings and the state of the planet, and leaving behind the harsh nature of Capricorn. However, in this lunar eclipse on the 16th, there are a couple of factors that make this more difficult, because if we look at the chart like a chessboard, we see that we have the Sun and Venus looking very vulnerable and sensitive and loving and hopeful over on one side of the chart conjunct the North Node. However, on the other side of the chart, in a direct opposition, we have Saturn at 16 degrees Capricorn, really bearing down on Venus. And along with him, he has Pluto, who's also retrograde in Capricorn. And when you see Saturn and Pluto together like this in Capricorn, there's a sinister nature to them that is really starting to come out more and more during this eclipse. It's very harsh in comparison to the loving nature of Cancer that's really seeking security and softness. Capricorn is the direct opposite of that. And when we look at Pluto and Saturn together in Capricorn, we are talking about authority. And we'll also have the Sun in direct opposition to Pluto, which is the signature of oppression and power struggles. So immediately when we look at this chart, we see that there's a power struggle happening between this dynamic, and a lot of this has to do with our security. It definitely could be financial for some. Venus rules finances, and when she's in Cancer, she wants so desperately to have security. She wants security within her relationship. She wants security within her home. She wants security in all manners. And when Pluto and Saturn are bearing down on her in Capricorn, they're making those desires very difficult to achieve, and there's a sense of unrest and inner safety being threatened by that dynamic. The other thing that we notice about the chart during this eclipse is that we have Mars squaring Uranus, and when Mars squares Uranus, there's an eruptive quality that's very much desiring freedom. Mars square Uranus has a sense of rebellion around it. There is an eruptive sense of anarchy, so we can potentially expect to see that on the stage of the world during this eclipse. And I think that paying attention to what's happening on the stage of the world during this eclipse is very important, because there's a cord of influence between this eclipse and the very intense eclipse that we will have at the beginning of next year. January 10th, 2020, we have an eclipse. The aspects are off the charts, and this eclipse is linked to that eclipse. So pay attention to what happens, particularly politically, because Capricorn rules authority, because we can expect to see perhaps something coming to light regarding themes of oppression, perhaps with the feminine, because Cancer rules all things feminine, the archetype of the mother, the archetype of children and childhood. With Saturn and Pluto bearing down on that space, we can see some kind of oppressive theme come up again within this eclipse on Tuesday the 16th that will perhaps ripen or become more magnified at the beginning of next year. So I think it's important to pay attention, remaining objective and detached somewhat, and not letting our inner landscape become too affected by whatever is happening on the stage of the world. We also have Mercury and Mars conjunct in Leo. Now, this is good because with Mercury and Mars in Leo, we are feeling inspired to take a more confident role in our reality. We're inspired to create more. However, Mercury will be retrograde. And when Mercury is retrograde, as we know, it's not always a time to pull the trigger or get the green light on instigating or initiating projects, but perhaps more a time to gather ideas and I think reflect on ways to creatively wiggle out of some of the strain that Saturn and Pluto are putting on poor Venus and the Sun in our chart during this eclipse. So this eclipse for me brings up undeniable themes around good and evil, light and dark, right and wrong, softness and stability. And I think it really brings up matters of good and evil and an underlying sense that what's happening on the planet right now is much larger than we've been led to think. It's bigger than the president. It's bigger than individuals who are in a place of authority. And what is really going on here and whose interests are really being taken into account. And with this, we can look at the archetype of Lucifer, who of course was a fallen angel who decided to separate himself from source, to separate himself from God, the collective, feeling connection, become separate and go off and create his own kingdom set up by his rules and his interests, very much focused on power, very much focused on the lower frequencies of the human consciousness, such as greed or material success over emotional health, power over others, competition. A lot of this eclipse has to do with competition because we're dealing with the lower octave of Capricorn, which is the dark dictator, or getting joy or success through having power over people. So this is the misuse of power. But within the story of Lucifer, this is, of course, we all know what happened to him, and he then became the symbol of the underworld and the lesson of what happens when we separate from our connection to source, and in so doing, disconnect from our connection to other human beings. And what we end up doing is creating a living hell realm or living kingdom of hell for ourselves while we're on this planet. And so this eclipse is really asking us to reach for the Pluto polarity point. In astrology, the cure is always found in the opposition in the chart. So if we look at Pluto in Capricorn, where he's acting very sinister, very harsh, very unemotional, and very dark in this spread, if we look across from him and recognize that the Pluto polarity point is in Cancer, we can see that the light at the end of the tunnel within this eclipse is dismantling the lower frequency of Capricorn, freeing ourselves from imprisonment, enslavement, oppression, freeing ourselves from self-criticism, competition, feeling like we're not good enough, attaching our self-worth to success, disconnection emotionally from other people. We know that Capricorn has these barriers and these walls, has a very stoic persona, and really dissolving and reaching for Cancer, which is emotional honesty and connection and softness and embrace. It's the mother and the child. So this is a very emotional and somewhat traumatic journey for some beings on this planet right now. I myself never particularly resonated with conventional beliefs or tradition. That's not the case for everyone. There are people, lots of people on this planet who understandably placed their trust in these systems, who understandably placed their trust and beliefs in authority and thought that their best interest was being watched out for. And now it's being revealed slowly, but with mounting intensity, that is not the case. And that's traumatic, and it's a lot, and it's coming from a lot of different directions, and it's confronting. It can feel helpless. I think that there are a lot of people feeling powerless, and there's so much happening so quickly that it's very hard to know what to do about it. And of course, we're talking on a mass scale right now. But with the Pluto polarity point in Cancer, the medicine or the cure to this feeling is to reconnect with the heart, to remain compassionate and connected despite increasing odds against that movement, to, detach from that lower octave of Capricorn, this kind of Luciferian separateness, and remember that we are one family, Cancer. We are connected. What happens to this planet is our responsibility. No one else is going to come and save the day, that we have to do it collectively and come together and connect and dissolve those barriers and have those difficult conversations. A lot of this is very confronting. It's about confronting reality. A lot of people are looking around their lives. A lot of my readings are about this. People working careers or jobs that promise security, but are increasingly emotionally dissatisfied with those choices, but are having that inner struggle of, my parents told me to do this, or I went to school for this and I was promised this and now I don't have that, and I'm working a job that I dislike. And that's why astrology is so magical, because it's really the map back to what you were really here to do, regardless of all the programming. So a lot of this is about programming. It's about healing ancestry, confronting the wounds within childhood, which are very painful for many to confront, healing our relationship with our parents and their parents, etc. And through all of this, we have a trine and sextile to Neptune. So there is this overarching, very mystical plan unfolding of a spiritual nature that is really kind of the overarching umbrella of all of this, where there is a grand story playing out. It is a story, as I said, I think, of good and evil, the light and the dark. And a lot of this eclipse is asking us, regardless of the weight that Saturn and Pluto are carrying in this chart, and like I said, really kind of looming over the poor Sun and Venus in their very vulnerable position, remembering that the Sun and Venus are with the North Node. They're with the direction that we are going inevitably, which is one of interconnectedness and compassion and love, and remaining rooted in that and finding an inner center of stillness, and not letting the world make us harsh, and remembering that love will and does find a way, because it is our true nature. As extensions of Source, God is love. We are extensions of that. We are love, regardless of the programming and regardless of how our minds complicate things and how our ego, in some cases, makes us do and say things that are not within that vibration. We can always return to that. And as a planet, that's what we're desperately trying to do. So regardless of what Saturn and Pluto are trying to do over there, and whatever comes up on the stage of the world during this eclipse, remember that there's a bigger story at play here. Cancer is about our intuition, tapping into that, and not letting that external authority scare us or frighten us away from our true nature, because frankly, they've done enough of that at this point. So it's a very exciting time. There's a lot going on. Southern California has had these crazy earthquakes, and we've got Trump talking about ETs, and it's happening really quickly. And a lot of us that experienced an awakening in 2011, 2012, we've known that this is coming. There's been this inner knowing, this inner stirring, for those of us who are tapped into that. And the time is here. It's happening, and it's getting, it's increasing in magnitude, and we can only expect to see more of that. And I don't say that to instill hysteria or a sense of doom or anything apocalyptic like that, because this isn't going to be one event. It's not, it's a process. It's a birthing process. There are contractions, and these eclipses are those contractions. So, yeah, it's a wild ride, and I'm so grateful to be on it with you guys and be living in this time because it's so exciting. So thank you guys so much for tuning into my channel. I know the lighting is a little bit weird in this one. I do apologize. I'll be back in my studio next video. If you would like to reach out to me for a reading, you're more than welcome to do so. My email will be down below. We can look at your chart, where this eclipse is affecting it. We can look at the transits for the coming year, come up with a game plan. A lot of my sessions have been working out that way recently. As you guys move through these massive shifts, it's been really fun. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.